Well, thanks for joining us today, Keith, as we go deeper. Loved the message you just brought to us as we wrapped up the Deep and Wide series, and there was so much in that, and I've got a bunch of questions and we won't have time for all of them, but I just want to start with this. One thing you mentioned was that we're in a new season. It feels like there's a new season coming, a season in God, a season with the church. Tell us a little bit, not just for Coast Community, but the church around Australia. What are you noticing? What could you identify this season as, possibly?
Wow. How long have we got?
Oh, yeah, not long.
No. I think the essence of this season, and I don't want to underestimate where that quote came from, because Jesus was saying, Jesus, as the Son of God, I'm here. That's the season you're in. Yep. Wake up. So I'm not equating our season directly with that, but saying that this is a season of adversity, and that in adversity we have the opportunity to be prompted to go deeper in order, one, to adapt, but more importantly even, to see new ways and to dream, to be innovative. And that therefore we can see the season without in any way underestimating how traumatic it is to many, many people. Yeah. That this is a way in which God is gently, and I'm not underestimating trauma, but God in his almighty power is gently nudging us to actually come back to the basics. Yeah. And live that deeply, and then, because we're secure in him, to be able to risk, to be able to go wider, yeah. To be able to think differently and respond differently.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things in that I just want to pull out. So one of them is, you made a comment in your message that discipleship is, maybe at best it's cracked, but it's probably broken to some degree in the Western church. And that's one of those real foundational things. It's the follow me. It's the come and be a disciple, learn from me how to live. How do we repair that? How do we work on that in the context of something new? What's that look like for us?
I don't want to be negative or critical, but I think just looking at the Western world generally, as far as Christianity is concerned, we must recognise that fewer people are committing themselves. In fact, we're not replacing the people who are Christian who die with new Christians. Yeah, okay. So there's, and yet the history of the church is one of going wider and going larger. Not that numbers are the most important thing, but numbers indicate health, and therefore there's potentially a dilemma. For me, and I don't want to underestimate the depth or the complicated nature of this, but it's just a matter of following Jesus. Get back to what Jesus taught and who he was. And it's much wider than the Sermon on the Mount, but the Sermon on the Mount encapsulates that. And just seek to have my values, the way I live life, the relationships that I have, to have those as much as possible from a stewardship point of view and from the Spirit of God's power within me, to have them line up with the direction that Jesus is challenging me as a follower of him. So that, and I've said this previously, I don't want to repeat too often, but I find myself being encapsulated by values, because I'm bombarded by them in the media and whatever, that are not necessarily Christian values, and surreptitiously inculcating them into who I am, like about individualism. It's all about
consumerism,
hedonism, all of those. And again, I don't want to be negative, but the basis of Christianity is that I have my sense of value from the part I play in the community with you and with many other people. Together we are able to make a difference.
Yeah.
I get my value as a person not from being a consumer as much as from being a contributor and a committed person.
Yeah.
So that I need to judge, examine my thinking on a regular basis. Am I just surreptitiously being enticed into this in a way that is so general that I use the word cracked or maybe even broken to follow Jesus? The result of that in our world today seems in some ways to be lacking in harmony with who Jesus was.
Yeah, so there's a sense, I get in this, it's nearly the pruning analogy, that we nearly need a real pruning of the church.
Yes.
And maybe it's something like what we're going through at the moment, which will effectively be a pruning.
Yes.
And then coming back to what you mentioned earlier, and then it's not just about adapting to something new, it's being innovative in something new. And I want to tie in the parable you used about when Jesus was teaching on the boats and they'd been fishing all night, and he asked them to throw their nets out again, and they, you explained it really well that Peter would have had every reason to say this is not going to work.
I think he did say.
Yeah, and I think we can be like that in the church. We can hear all these things and go, well, it just doesn't work in my context. We're not seeing people come to faith. We're not seeing that. But there's three things that you brought out of that, which I thought were really key, was that firstly it led Peter to realise he's actually a sinful man, and that we can't do this in our own strength. And secondly, other boats had to come in to help. And I love that picture of churches actually becoming more unified.
Wouldn't you love that?
Yeah.
That the harvest is so great that in order to help people to grow, we have to work together.
I know. Imagine that. Right, And then the third thing that happened out of that was particularly at that point, Peter and his brother Andrew and James and John just followed that call, follow me. They accepted that. So all that tied in together, I love the idea that I think we, as not only as Coast Community Church, but as the church in Australia and the wider world, we need to be really innovative about how do we reach people, or actually exist to reach people. And I think we've let that go a little bit, and I'm really excited about what that could look like for us moving forward. What do you think it would do to the average person in the church in Australia to have that significant shift that we exist for the sake of others, and everything we do is for those who are lost, that they would come to know Jesus? How do you foresee that practically outworking as we move forward?
Well, I think you put your finger on, in one way, an essence, maybe not the essence, but an essence of discipleship is that the focus of life goes from self-centeredness to God-centeredness and to other-centeredness, and therefore we become more and more sensitized to how other people are coping and living, and become compassionate and courageous in the way we express that. That in itself is winsome. It's people will look at us and say, what's different? In the early church, and I love it in Acts 2 and Acts 5, on two separate occasions, it says something like, after the fact that people were becoming Christians, and people liked what they saw. And I believe actually that the essence of flavours of love and grace that are the essence of Christianity, if that can be deeper within us, then actually people will like what they see and therefore not have the barriers up of feeling like as if we're hypocritical or judgmental or negative or
Which
whatever.
is the current perception, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately, so that we will be able to be, as it says, light and salt, or the colours and flavours of God.
Colours and flavours, You speak of that a lot, and that was coming to mind as you were saying that. I mean, there's so much in that, and I'm just really looking forward to coming into this new season, allowing firstly God to lead us and shape us. There's not us choosing what we want to do. And God is probably the most innovative being in the world. Like, you just look at his creation. So if we can align ourselves with that, and he knows what we need to do to reach the lost, and he knows what we need to do to be the church, to be salt and light, and we follow him in that,
Yes.
it looks like a good way to go, doesn't it?
It does, but let's not underestimate how important the going deep is and how radical this new life is, because it's only on that basis that we have any good news, any message to go, so that if we try and go wider without going deeper, it'll fail, it will be hollow or whatever. So the innovativeness of the Spirit of God as he goes deeper within us will grow us and allow us to be less risk averse and more open to his voice and to discerning his voice in the many voices around us, and to go for that.
Yeah, I know. Wow, there's so much in that. We could probably keep talking for a while, but we won't. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for the message you brought as we wrapped up that series. And again, I'd just love to encourage you, if you haven't heard all of our Deep and Wide series, get online, check that out. So until we meet next time, we'll see you then. Thanks.